so here's your second part of notes for today. We're going to be talking about Lewis dots. So write down the title. This is part 1 because this is going to be a topic that we come back to later on. But we're going to start off talking about this. Lewis dots are certain structures that we draw in chemistry. And they help us because they help us be able to draw pictures in a simpler way. So normally we draw Bohr models to see our valence electrons, right? So I could ask you to draw the Bohr model of BE, sorry I zoomed in there, BE, and you would do BE, and if you look at your periodic table, you see BE has 4 electrons. So you'd put 2 electrons here, and then you put 2 on the outside, and you'd be done. That's pretty easy. But say I ask you for an element like iodine. And iodine has 53 electrons. For you to draw this, you'd have to draw so many circles, right? And so many dots in here. You have to do 53, and it'd be really hard. So instead, we've come up with this way to do it called the Lewis dot. Because if you remember, our valence electrons are really important. That's what we want to look for. We don't care so much about any of these electrons that are in here. We just care about the electrons that are just on our outer ring. So we came up with Lewis dots because they are models that we make that only have the valence electrons, because that's the part that we care about. So a Lewis structure for BE would look kind of like this. That's a Lewis dot structure for BE. For I, it would look kind of like this. Alright, so this is what we're going to be working towards to make today. You'll notice that BE on our periodic table up here, BE is right here, and it has 2 valence electrons. So here it would have 2 valence electrons. You'll see I around it, you'd count, it has 7. You go up here, you see I here, and it has 7 valence electrons. So Lewis dots are just ways for us to see valence electrons. So there's 2 steps in writing Lewis dots. I would start writing your notes at this point. You don't need to worry about the above notes, but here you need to start writing. So here are your 2 steps. Your first step is to write your element symbol. And then your second step is to put the number of dots for your valence electrons. So what we're going to do this is you put the dots in a clockwise circle around each side. And then you do it once around, and then you do it twice. So you're going to put them in a clockwise circle. Once, and then twice if needed. So for example, with I, how we did it is you start with the I. It has 7 valence electrons. So we put 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice how I went in a clockwise circle like that. And then we start again. 5, 6, 7. So we put a second dot until we get to 7. You'll notice that we can only have a total of 8 dots. But that's okay because we only have 8 valence electrons ever. So you're only going to always have to just add to 8 dots or less. So it might be confusing still at this point. So let's go over some examples, all right? So here's an example. Let's do the Lewis dot structure of Ne. So I have your periodic table out in front of you. I'll scroll up so we can see how many valence electrons Ne has, because that's our first step. So Ne is right here. All right. So if you go up to the top, you'll see Ne has 8 valence electrons. So it has 8 valence electrons that we're going to put. So we start at the top, and then we're just going to go in a clockwise circle. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have to add some more dots. 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. So that's your Lewis dot for Ne. You go in the clockwise circle, and you can always count at the end, and you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 valence electrons. Great. Let's try another one. Let's do Mg. So look at your periodic table. I'll scroll up. Mg is right here. You'll see it has 2 valence electrons. So Mg is easy. You just go 1, 1, 2. Another one could be carbon. That'll be our last one we do. So here's carbon. Find carbon in your periodic table. You'll see it's right up here in 4a. So it has 4 valence electrons. So we just go 1, 2. We're going in a clockwise circle. 3, 4. 4 valence electrons. That's your Lewis dot structure. So they're not too difficult to do, but you just have to get the practice and the hang of it. We also can do creating ions. So now we're going to create ions with our Lewis dots. So let's take Mg that we have. Mg, and it has 2 valence electrons. If you remember, if we draw Mg as a Bohr model, this is what it looks like. Right, this is Mg as a Bohr model. So you'll notice that if I take away these 2 electrons, these 2 valence electrons, then we have 8 electrons underneath here, right? So we want to take away those 2 valence electrons when we do our Lewis dot structures. So instead of doing this to create our ion, we're going to do Mg, and instead of putting these 2 electrons here, we're going to erase them. But since we erase them, now Mg has a charge. So to show that it has a charge, you put it in brackets, and you put plus 2. Because we took away 2 electrons. We took away this electron, and we took away that electron to create Mg plus 2. So let's do another one. So let's start off with, how about F? So normally F has 7 valence electrons. So you can go put your dots around, 7 of them. And remember, we want everything to have 8 valence electrons. So for F, instead of erasing all 7 of those, we are going to actually add in an electron. So F, we draw our Lewis dots, and we added in an extra electron, right? Let me highlight it for you. This electron right here is what we added in. So since we added in an electron, we add in a negative charge. So since we added in a negative charge, we put the brackets around it and we put a negative. Or you could put a -1 if you'd rather. All right, let's do 2 practices. Hopefully you'll feel comfortable. So let's do Na as an ion. So Na normally has 1 valence electron. So think in your head, are we going to add 7 or are we going to take away the 1? Hopefully you said we're going to take away the 1. So put it in brackets, Na. Since we're taking away, we're just erasing this 1 up top. We don't need any dots, and it's going to have a +1 charge, or a plus charge. Your last one we're going to do is O. So oxygen, if you look on your periodic table, you'll see it's in 6A, so it's going to have 6 valence electrons. 6 valence electrons. You're going to add 2 electrons, right? Instead of erasing all 6 of those, adding 2 is going to be way easier. So let's add 2 electrons, and it's going to be an O, and it's going to have now all 8, right? 6 plus 2 is 8. 8 electrons. Since we added in these 2 electrons right here, it needs to have a -2 charge. Alright, hopefully this all made sense to you. Like I said, it just takes some practice, so do your work. I'm going to be making comments on your worksheets and things like that to help you figure things out. Email me if you have any questions, or we can do some meeting up on Friday or video call or something like that, alright? Good luck. Let me know if you need